Hello, in this video we're looking at Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 1, verse 28. As usual, I will read the verse out without the text up on the screen and then with the text on the screen. Kripaya paraya vishto vishidan nidamabravit Arjuna uvacha drishtveman swajjanam Krishna yuyutsam samupastitam. And of course, as a sentence, that continues into the next verse, but we'll just deal with it verse by verse. Now I will call up the text for you. There we are. Kripaya paraya vishtu vishidan nidamabravit Arjuna uvacha drishtveman svajjanam Krishna yuyutsum samupastitam. This Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, in the text of the Bhagavad-Gita, most of the text of the entire Bhagavad-Gita is the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and interspersed in the text and is written I think in all of the Sanskrit traditions I've seen, where you change from one speaker to the other to help the reader, Arjuna uvacha. Now it's Arjuna speaking, not Krishna. And in the chants that I have heard, I don't know if it's invariably done like this, but in the chants that I've heard, that is repeated by the chanter as well, in the way that I've just done it now. That accounts for me saying Arjuna uvacha between the first and second lines of that verse. So Arjuna, and I do urge you, though I'm sure most of you know it anyway, but I do urge you, those who don't, just to read up on a little bit of the background of this central story of the Mahabharata, which is the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. This is what happens immediately before that battle, and is regarded as as it were, the high spiritual point of the Bhagavad Gita, and indeed in the eyes of many, if not most Hindus, the high spiritual point of the whole of Hindu literature as well. So here we are. Arjuna is overcome, that's avishta, by kripa. Not just kripa, but para kripa. The root vish, to enter. Let me call up the iPad for you. Where are we? Oops. Vish, to enter. And you can prefix with the verbal prefix avish, avishati, which has broadly the same meaning, but can also be used as here for if you're overcome by a particular emotional feeling. You can be bhayavishta, overcome by fear. It means that fear has entered into you. We say it comes over you, or you were overcome by it. In Sanskrit, it has entered into you. So here's avishto. Avishto here by Santi would be avishtaha. Avishto vishidan idam abravit, because of the following voiced consonant. Of course, the ah becomes o. Note that this verb makes a regular past participle. It's vish plus regular past participle, ta. But by internal sandhi, and this is a regular formation, wherever within the same word you get a sh, palatal sh, this one, followed by ta, it becomes shta, and that's automatic. And that is why you get, in this word, avishta. That's regular and normal. You will never find a palatal sh followed by a t like that. It's incapable of existing in Sanskrit. So kripa, you could um, translate as pity, tenderness, compassion, but this is one of those words, and in fact, I'd like to do it with all words in Sanskrit, but this is one in the top list. Don't fixate on the English translation. You can see it for yourselves. Look at Arjuna, a man of high moral standards, about to be compelled by his own dharma, his own duties, to fight against and kill people he loves, members of his own family, cousins, teachers. He is going to see disaster and horror befall both branches of the same family. What feeling does he have when he's seeing this disaster about to happen? Kripa. And this is the instrumental. It's a feminine noun, ending along a, kripa, instrumental kripaya, because he is overcome by this feeling of kripa. And para, the cognate, as we know with our English word far, para has quite a number of meanings, far, other, and also means extreme, far out. So by far kripa, by extreme kripa. So he's overcome by paraya kripaya. And the normal word order in Sanskrit for adjectives and nouns is mostly the same as in English, adjective first and then noun, but it can be inverted, particularly in verse as here, which is why it's kripaya paraya. So kripaya paraya vishto. So entered or overcome by extreme kripa, this extreme sense of almost like horrified pity, a sense of horror and pity at the same time. This awful thing is about to happen. Vishidan, from the root sad, to sit. It's a bit irregular because it makes its present tense, it changes the a to e. So sit, he sits, he, she, it sits, is not sadati but sidati. With the prefix vi, the separative prefix, of meaning away, apart, the idea of vishidan here, there's a double subtext here. Sad sidati, firstly, is an ordinary verb just meaning sit. However, it has, in certain contexts, it has another meaning, sitting or collapsing, not being able to stand. And in fact, in the very next verse, we'll look at it now, the very next verse, 29, opens with the words, Sidanti mamagatrani, my limbs sit. The meaning here is my limbs cannot stand. I've become so shaken I can't even stand up. So the gatrani, my limbs and particularly legs, from the root ga, to go, the gatra, and we'll deal with that in the next verse. Sidanti mamagatrani, my legs are sitting. In other words, I can't even stand up. In that meaning, now put the prefix vi on it, we get the verbal noun actually vishada. Of course, the s changes to a sh because of the preceding e, vishada. Often translated as despair. Um, in fact, this particular section of the Bhagavad Gita's chapter is called the Arjuna Vishada, the Arjuna despair, the Vishada of Arjuna. So not only is he collapsing, in the Siddhati collapsing sense, can't stand up, but V is like falling apart, collapsing and falling apart. In other words, inability, collapse, despair. Despair is the emotional side of it, the physical side of it, like the inability, falling to bits, collapsing, falling to bits, vishada. So the present participle, um, the verb is he, she, it, despairs, falls apart, vishidati, and so the nominative, singular, masculine past participle is vishidan, and the accusative would be vishidantam, instrumental vishidatta, here just vishidan, nominative singular masculine. Note in the text that, where are we? Note in the text, sorry, making this up. You've got this double N here. Vishidanidam bravit, double N. This is a regular rule of Sandhi, where you have a word ending in a N, preceded by a short vowel and followed by any other vowel, it doubles. That is a regular rule of Sandhi. If it's a long vowel, that rule, the end doesn't change, the rule doesn't apply. So he said to them, for example, tan abravit. Remember, in Sanskrit and Pali, if you're saying something to somebody, you'd still use the accusative in Sanskrit and Pali. So he said to them, tan abravit, but because it's a long vowel there, followed by an N, the N remains a single, but short vowel followed by short vowel N, new word, long vowel, vishidanidam abravit, it doubles. So despairing, loosely translated despairing, as I've just explained, there's more to it than that. Idam, this is just the ordinary neuter, idam. Abravit, he said. Abravit, I've explained the word in the notes. It's slightly irregular because instead this is a class 2 verb where the class 2 imperfect, where normally it would just end in a t, but in a couple of verbs, it becomes not just end in a t, but an eat, and a long e is inserted. There are a couple of very common ones like this. The two most common, might as well learn them now. Abravit, he, she, it said. The other one is asit, from the root as, to be. Asit, was. And they're both what's called imperfects. By the way, the reason Western grammarians call them imperfect is slightly misleading. Those of you who are familiar with Latin and the Romance languages, the French they call the imparfait, imperfect, el imperfecto in Spanish. It's called that in Latin and the Romance languages because It relates to an action, or rather, it denotes an action continuing in the past. You are not focusing on the completion of the action, but on the fact that it was a continuing thing. In English, we might say, I was walking along the road when I saw something. Was walking is the imperfect, it's an ongoing. When I saw, that's an immediate one-off thing, I saw. So the so the imperfect means not completed and ongoing. The reason Western grammarians call this tense the imperfect, the Sanskrit tense the imperfect, is because in grammatical form it is cognate with the equivalents in Latin and incidentally Greek. And therefore that name kind of stuck because it's morphologically the Latin imperfect is in form very close to this particular form of the verb in Sanskrit. However, it does not have an imperfect meaning in Sanskrit. It is a past definite in Sanskrit. So it's not he was saying, you can just translate he said. If you're putting this into Latin, it wouldn't, abravit, you wouldn't translate it as dicebat, he was saying, but dixit, he said. In French, not il disait, in Spanish decía, but the past definite, il dit, Spanish dijo. So Arjuna said, Drishtvemang svajanam Krishna yuyutsam samupastitam. Right, Krishna here is in the vocative, so this is just he's inserted the vocative. Having seen my own people, O Krishna, eager to fight, arrayed, as in lined up for battle. Drishtva, having seen, or now that I see, having this moment seen, Drishtva, imam swajanam. Janam, people, swa means one's own. It's actually cognate with our English word self. Those of you who know Russian, it's svoi. And in Latin, the suus, one's own. And in French, for example, soi, the SOI, soi, oneself, soi-même, soi-disant, soi. It's that same swa in Sanskrit. So swajanam means my own people, my own family. The drishtva imam becomes drishtvemam by sandhi. The imam is we saw the neuter form of it in the first line, idam. In the masculine singular accusative, it is imam. So, imam swajanam, this my people here. So drishtva imam swajanam, having seen, as it were, these my people. Note that jana is singular in form, though is plural in meaning, mostly plural in meaning. It's cognate with the Latin gens, gentis, people, and Romance languages treat it differently. For example, in Italian, la gente is singular and it means people generally, whereas in French, it's put in the plural, it's les gens, but not la gens, but les gens. In modern French and earlier French, you could say la gens, meaning people generally. Modern French, les gens. So, drishtva imang swajanam, having seen these my people, Krishna, O Krishna, yuyutsum samupastitam. Yuyutsum, this is a desiderative form of the verb. Let me call you up here. Um, Desideratives, that is where in English and most languages, if you want a desiderative, you have to use like a word like wanting. But in Sanskrit, you have a particular form of the verb that of itself implies, not implied, denotes a wanting to do. So, um, looking at the verb yud, let me go to a new page. Yud means to fight. It's a class 4 verb, which means it adds a ya in its root, not yudhati or yudhati, but yudhiyati. In fact, it's usually atmanepada. Yudhyate, and this ya is there because it's a class 4, yudhyate. To make a desiderative verb, you reduplicate the first part of the root syllable. So yud, so just yud. By internal sandhi, you cannot have a the followed by a sa. By internal sandhi, you cannot have a soft consonant unvoiced followed by, sorry, you can't have a voiced followed by an unvoiced. So we know what happens, comes yuyuts, yutsati. And this can be atmanepada or parasmaipada. So yuyutsati means to want to fight, to have the desire to fight. So we have this form of the verb that implies two things. It implies the notion of fighting, which is the root yud, but with this form of the verb yuyutsati means he is eager to fight. This ending, so the characteristic of the desideratives are the adding of an s and the reduplication of the first syllable. Now, the adjective formed from that, instead of the ending sati, you just put su. So, yutsu. This su is the adjectival ending, means desirous of fighting, wanting to fight, having the wish to fight. In this kind of context, you could translate it as something like eager for battle. So he's, and if you look back to our text here, where were we? This yuyutsum, this now declines like a nominal, as in a noun or adjective, in the normal way, ending in it declines exactly like bhikshu, for example. So yuyutsum, it's the accusative to agree with swajjanam, drishtva swajjanam yuyutsum, having seen my own people, as of the other faction of his own people, yuyutsum, eager for battle, wanting to fight, samupastitam, all arrayed, yuyutsum samupastitam, eager for battle, arrayed, standing in line. Samupastita, was from the root sta, to stand. Past participle, remember, not stata, but stita. It changes to an e. Stita. In Pali, we have titta. Sorry, I have been writing on my iPad without letting you see it. Sorry about that. Here we are. So the yud, I can't remember where I got to now. Yuyutsu na stita. We have some upastita. If you are upastita, the prefix upa, like standing ready, standing up to something. Let's just see what upastita. Yeah, come near, approached, arrived, present, near at hand, near, impending, receive. It's one of these polysemic words, and stood up. Up, stood means you're there, you're present. Um, Here, you're some all together, together. You're co-up, stood. Look at it in English. Seeing my people, these other people, some eager for battle, co-up, stood. All arrayed in their ranks, standing ready together. Samupastita. Feel the word in Sanskrit rather than translating into. We could translate as arrayed for battle, yeah. But look at it in Sanskrit. Some together, there, upastita, stood, gathered in their ranks, stood ready for battle. So I will read it once more. Oh, we are. Oops, sorry. कृपया परयाविष्टो विषीदन्निदमब्रवीत् अर्जुन उवाच दृष्ट्वेमं स्वज्जनं कृष्ण युयुत्सुं समुपस्थितम्. By the way, just a note on Arjuna Uvacha in case you're. Where's my iPad gone? Come on, iPad. There we are. Arjuna Uvacha. The Uvacha here is the reduplicated perfect. And again, it's called the perfect because it coincides with the corresponding tense in Greek and to a large extent with in Latin. It's called reduplicated perfect. For this reason, we have the root vach, cognate with the Latin vox, vocal. Vach, speech, or to speak, to say, here said. You make a reduplicated perfect by reduplicating the first part of the root or part of it by a short a here. If the root has an a followed by a single consonant, that becomes vriddhi, so becomes. So he, she, it said is vavacha. Don't bother to learn this by heart yet, I'm just explaining it. Now, by samprasarana, this va softens to an u, being an unstressed va before the stressed syllable. So that is why it becomes uvacha, not vavacha, but uvacha. In fact, in Pali, This is the one that you see appearing as avocha. The A becomes an O under the influence of the labial avocha. That's you'll often see the word avocha in Pali. So, what is the difference between abravit and uvacha? Essentially none, really. You could say without changing the meaning at all, Vishidan idamavocha, and you could have said Arjuna abravit, which of course by Sandhi would become Arjuno bravit. In reality, I don't think there's any difference between the meanings of those two, and as far as I know, we can safely say that they're fully interchangeable. So I'll read this once more before winding up this video. Oops, sorry, put up the wrong one. What am I trying to find? Here we are. Kripaya parayavishto vishidanidamabravit Arjuna uvacha drishtveman swajjanam Krishna yujutsum samupastitam. Okay, we'll leave that here. And as I said, this sentence as it were, continues in the next video.